Welcome back. Um, Ernest Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea. I have been averaging about 20 pages a day, and the book is not very long, so I figure this is part four of what will be six. When we left off, the man had hooked a fish at noon. He had stayed with him through the whole night, being steadily towed out to sea. He had started eating at dawn the tuna that he had caught, and his hands were cramping. Be patient, Hand, he said. I do this for you. I wish I could feed the fish, he thought. He is my brother. But I must kill him and keep strong to do it. Slowly and conscientiously, he ate all of the wedge-shaped strips of fish. He straightened up, wiping his hand on his trousers. Now, he said, you can let go of the cord, Hand, and I will handle him with my right arm alone until you stop that nonsense. He put his left foot on the heavy line that led the left hand held back, and then lay back against the pool against his back. God help me to have the cramp go, he said, because I do not know what the fish is going to do. But he seems calm, he thought, and following his plan. But what is his plan, he thought, and what is mine? Mine I must improvise to his because of his great size. If he will jump, I can kill him, but he stays down forever, then I will stay down with him forever. He rubbed the cramped hand against his trousers and tried to gentle the fingers, but it would not open. Maybe it will open with the sun, he thought. Maybe it will open when the strong raw tuna is digested. If I have to have it, I will open it, cost whatever it costs. But I do not want to open it now by force. Let it open by itself and come back of its own accord. After all, I abused it much in the night when it was necessary to free and untie the various lines. He looked across the sea and knew how alone he was now, but he could see the prisms in the deep dark water and the line stretching ahead and the strain undulation of the calm. The clouds were building up now for the trade wind, and he looked ahead and saw a flight of wild ducks etching themselves against the sky over the water, then blurring, then etching again, and he knew no man was ever alone on the sea. He thought of how some men feared being out of sight of the land in a small boat, and knew they were right in the months of sudden bad weather. But now they were in hurricane months, and when there were no hurricanes, the weather of hurricane months is the best of all the year. If there is a hurricane, you'll always see the signs of it in the sky for days ahead. If you are at sea, you know the warning. They do not see it ashore because they do not know what to look for, he thought. The land must make a difference too, in the shape of the clouds. But we have no hurricane coming now. He looked at the sky and saw white cumulus built like friendly piles of ice cream high above were the thin feathers of the cirrus against the high September sky. Light brisa, he said. Better weather for me than for you fish. His left hand was still cramped, but he was unknotting it slowly. I hate a cramp, he thought. It is treachery of one's own body. It is humiliating before others to have a diarrhea from ptomaine poisoning or to vomit from it. But a cramp, he thought of it as a calambre, humilities oneself, especially when one is alone. If the boy were here, he could rub it for me and loosen it up from the forearm, he thought, but it will not loosen up. Then, with his right hand, he felt the difference in the pull of the line before he saw the slant change in the water. Then, as he leaned against the line and slapped his left hand hard and fast against the thigh, he saw the line slanting slowly upward. He's coming up, he said. Come on, Hand. Please, come on. The line rose slowly and steadily, and then the surface of the ocean bulged ahead of the boat, and the fish came out. He came out unendingly, and water poured from his sides. He was bright in the sun, and his head and back were purple. In the sun, the stripes of his sides showed wide and a light lavender. His sword was as long as a baseball bat and tapered like a rapier, and he rose his full length from the water and then re-entered it, smoothly, like a diver, and the old man saw the great scythe blade of his tail go under, and the line commenced to race out. He is 2 feet longer than the skiff, the old man said. The line was going out fast but steadily, and the fish was not panicked. The old man was trying with both hands to keep the line just inside of breaking strength. He knew that if he could not slow the fish with a steady pressure, the fish could take out all the line and break it. He is a great fish, and I must convince him, he thought. I must never let him learn his strength, nor what he could do if he made his run. If I were him, I would put in everything now and go until something broke. But thank God they are not as intelligent as we who kill them, although they are more noble and more able. The old man had seen many great fish. He had seen many that weighed more than 1,000 pounds, and he had caught two the size in his life. But never alone. Now alone and out of sight of land, and he was fast to the biggest fish that he had ever seen, even bigger than he had ever heard of, and his left hand was still as tight as the gripped claws of an eagle. It will uncramp, though, he thought. Surely it will uncramp to help my right hand. There are three things that are brothers, the fish and my two hands. It must uncramp. It is unworthy of it to be cramped. The fish had slowed again and was going at his usual pace. I wonder why he jumped, the old man thought. He jumped almost as though to show me how big he was. I know now, anyway, he thought. I wish I could show him what sort of man I am. But then he would see the cramped hand. Let him think I am more man than I am, and I will so be. I wish I was the fish, he thought, with everything he has against only my will and my intelligence. He settled comfortably against the wood and took his suffering as it came, and the fish swam steadily and the boat moved slowly through the dark water. There was a small sea rising with the wind coming up from the east, and at noon the old man's left hand was uncramped. Bad news for you, fish, he said, and shifted the line over the sacks that covered his shoulders. He was comfortable but suffering, although he did not admit the suffering at all. I am not religious, he said, but I will say our 10 fathers and 10 Hail Marys that I should catch this fish. And I promise to make a pilgrimage to the Virgin of Cobre if I catch him. That is a promise. He commenced to say his prayers mechanically. Sometimes he would be so tired that he could not remember the prayer, and then he would say them so fast that they would come out automatically. Hail Marys are easier to say than our fathers, he thought. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Then he added, Blessed Virgin, pray for the death of this fish, wonderful though he is. With his prayers and feeling much better, but suffering exactly as much and perhaps a little more, he leaned against the wood of the bow and began, mechanically, to work the fingers of his left hand. The sun was hot now, although the breeze was rising gently. I had better rebait that little line out over the stern. If the fish decides to stay another night, I will need to eat again, and the water is low in the bottle. I don't think I could get anything but a dolphin here, but if I eat him fresh enough, he won't be bad. I wish a flying fish would come on board tonight, but I have no light to attract them. A flying fish is an excellent eat raw, and I would not have to cut him up. But I must save my strength now. Christ, I did not know he was so big. I'll kill him, though, he said, in all his greatness and his glory. Although it is unjust, he thought, but I will show him what a man can do and what a man endures. I told the boy I was a strange old man, he said. Now is when I must prove it. The 1,000 times that he had proved it meant nothing. Now he was proving it again. Each time was a new time, and he never thought about the past when he was doing it. I wish he'd sleep, and I could sleep and dream about the lions, he thought. Why are the lions the main thing that is left? Don't think, old man, he said to himself. Rest gently now against the wood and think of nothing. He is working. Work as little as you can. It was getting into the afternoon, and the boat still moved slowly and steadily, but there was an added drag now from the easterly breeze, and the old man rowed gently with the small sea and the hurt of the cord across his back that came to him easily and smoothly. Once in the afternoon, the line started to rise again, but the fish only continued to swim at a slightly higher level. The sun was on the old man's left arm and shoulder and on his back, so he knew the fish had turned east of north. Now that he had seen him once, he could picture the fish swimming in the water, with his purple pectoral fins set wide as wings and the great erect tail slicing through the dark. I wonder how much he sees at that depth, the old man thought. His eye is huge, and a horse with much less eye can see in the dark. Once I could see quite well in the dark, not in the absolute dark, but almost as a cat sees. The sun and his steady movement of his fingers had uncramped his left hand now completely, and he began to shift more of the strain to it, and he shrugged the muscles of his back to shift the hurt of the cord a little. If you're not tired, fish, he said aloud, you must be very strange. He felt very tired now, and he knew the night would come soon, and he tried to think of other things. He thought of the big leagues. To him, they were the Grand Ligas, and he knew that the Yankees of New York were playing the Tigres of Detroit. This is the second day now that I do not know the result of the Juegos, he thought, but I must have confidence, and I must be worthy of great DiMaggio, who does all things perfectly, even with the pain of a bone spur in his heel. What is a bone spur? He asked himself. Una espuela de hueso. We do not have them. Can it be as painful as the spur of a fighting cock in one's heel? I do not think I could endure that, or the loss of an eye or both eyes, and continue to fight as the fighting cocks do. Man is not much beside the great birds and beasts. Still, I would rather be that beast down there in the darkness of the sea. Unless sharks come, he said. If sharks come, God pity him, and God pity me. Do you believe the great DiMaggio would stay with the fish as long as I will stay with this one, he thought. I am sure he would and more, since he is young and strong. Also, his father was a fisherman. But would the bone spur hurt him too much? I do not know, he said aloud. I've never had a bone spur. And then the sun set. he remembered, to give himself more confidence, the time in the tavern at Casablanca when he had played the hand game with the great Negro from Cienfuegos, who was the strongest man on the docks. They had gone one day and one night with their elbows on a chalk line on the table and their forearms straight up and their hands gripped tight. Each one was trying to force the other's hand down onto the table. There was much betting, and people went in and out of the room under the kerosene lights, and he had looked at the arm and the hand of the man and at his face. They changed the referees every 4 hours, and the first eight or so, the referees could sleep. Blood came out from under the fingernails of both his and the man's the opponent man's hands, and they looked at each other in the eye, and their hands and forearms, and the bettors went in and out of the room and sat on high chairs against the wall and watched. The walls were painted bright blue and were of wood, and the lamps threw their shadows against them. The man's shadow was huge, and it moved on the wall as the breeze moved the lamps. The odds would change back and forth all night, and they fed the opponent rum and lighted cigarettes for him. Then the opponent, after the rum, would try for a tremendous effort, and once had the old man, who was not an old man, but was Santiago El Campeon, nearly 3 inches off balance. But the old man had raised his hand up to dead even again. He was sure then that he had his opponent, who was a fine man and a great athlete, beaten. And at daylight, when the bettors were asking that it be called a draw and the referee was shaking his head, he had unleashed his effort and forced the hand of his opponent down and down until it rested on the wood. The match had started on a Sunday morning and ended on a Monday morning. Many of the bettors had asked for a draw because they had to go to work on the docks loading sacks of sugar or at the Havana Coal Company. Otherwise, everyone would have wanted it to go to a finish, but he had finished it anyway, and before anyone had to go to work. For a long time after that, everyone called him the champion, and there had been a return match in the spring, but not much money was bet, and he had won it quite easily, since he had broken the confidence of his opponent from Cienfuegos in the first match. After that, he had a few matches and then no more. He decided that he could beat anyone if he wanted to badly enough, and he decided it was bad for his right hand for fishing. But he had tried a few practice matches with his left hand, but his left hand had always been a traitor and would not do what he called on it to do, and he did not trust it. The sun will bake it out well now, he thought. It should not cramp on me again unless it gets too cold in the night. I wonder what this night will bring. An airplane passed over on its course to Miami, and he watched its shadow scaring up the schools of flying fish. With so much flying fish here, there should be dolphin, he said, and leaned back on the line to see if it was possible to gain any of his fish. But he could not, and it stayed at the hardness and the water drops shivering that preceded breaking. The boat moved ahead slowly, and he watched the airplane until he could no longer see it. It must be very strange in an airplane, he thought. I wonder what the sea looks like from that height. They should be able to see the fish well if they do not fly too high. I would like to fly very slowly at 200 fathoms high and see the fish from above. In the turtle boats, I was in the cross trees of the masthead, and even at that height, I saw much. The dolphin look greener from there, and you can see their stripes and their purple spots, and you can see all of the school as they swim. Why is it that all fast-moving fish of the dark current have purple backs and usually purple stripes or spots? The dolphin looks green, of course, because he is really golden, but when he comes to feed, truly hungry, purple stripes show on his sides, as on a marlin. Can it be anger, or the greater speed he makes that brings them out? Just before it was dark, as they passed a great island of Sargasso weed that heaved and swung in the light sea as though the ocean were making love with something under a yellow blanket, his small line was taken by a dolphin. He saw it first when it jumped in the air, true gold in the last of the sun, bending and flapping wildly in the air. It jumped again and again in the acrobats of fear, and he worked his way back to the stern, and crouching and holding the big line with his right arm and hand, he pulled the dolphin in with his left hand, stepping on the gain line each time with his bare left foot. When the fish was at the stern, plunging and cutting from side to side in desperation, the old man leaned over the stern and lifted the burnished gold fish with its purple spots over the stern. Its jaws were working convulsively in quick bites against the hook, and it pounded the bottom of the skiff with its long, flat body. Its tail and its head until he clubbed it across the shining golden head, until it shivered, and was still. The old man unhooked the fish, rebaited the line with another sardine, and tossed it over. Then he worked his way slowly back to the bow. He washed his left hand and wiped it on his trousers. Then he lifted the heavy line with it from his right hand to his left and washed his right hand in the sea while he watched the sun go into the ocean and the slant of the big cord. He hasn't changed at all, he said, but watching the movement of the water against his hand, he noted that it was perceptibly slower. I'll lash the 2 oars together across the stern, and that will slow him in the night. He's good for the night, and so am I. It would be better to gut the dolphin a little later to save the blood and the meat, he thought. I can do that a little later and lash the oars to make the drag at the same time. I had better keep the fish quiet now and not disturb him till much after sunset. The setting of the sun is a difficult time for all fish. He let his hand dry in the open air and grasped the line with it and eased himself as much as he could and allowed himself to be pulled forward against the wood so that the boat took the strain as much, or more, than he did. I'm learning how to do it, he thought, this part of it anyway. Then, too, he remembered he hadn't eaten since he took the bait, and he is huge and needs much food. I have eaten the whole bonito. Tomorrow I will eat the dolphin. He called it dorado. Perhaps I should eat some of it when I clean it. It would be harder to eat than the bonito. But then, nothing is easy. How do you feel, fish? He asked aloud. I feel good, and my left hand is better, and I have food for a night and a day. Pull the boat, fish. He did not truly feel good because the pain from the cord across his back had almost passed pain and gone into a dullness that he mistrusted. But I've had worse things than that, he thought. My hand is only cut a little, and the cramp is gone from the other. My legs are all right. Also, now I have gained on him the questions of sustenance. It was dark now, as it becomes dark quickly after the sun sets in September. He lay against the worn wood of the bow and rested all that he could. The first stars were out. He did not know the name of Rigel, but he saw it, and knew soon they would be all out, and he would have all of his distant friends. The fish is my friend too, he said aloud. I must never have seen or heard of such a fish, but I must kill him. I am glad we do not have to try to kill the stars. And we'll pick up tomorrow, right where we left off. Bye.